Welcome to Behave Yourself, the podcast that aims to bring the science of human behavior and how you can apply it to your own life and become the happiest, healthiest, and most successful version of you.
We're two behaviour analysts with backgrounds in personal training and nutrition who've struggled in the past with confidence, weight loss, breaking promises to ourselves, and constantly trying the quick fixes.
We bring the science and show you how to apply it confidently and consistently towards your own goals and how to actually create a lifestyle change.
Behaviour analysis is the science of human behaviour, and we all engage in behaviours that either move us towards the direction of our goals or hold us back from living the life we desire.
I'm one of your hosts, Emily McCrae.
And I'm your other host, Jo Wesley. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Have you been behaving yourself this week?
I have been hitting my water goal and my veggie goal, which are two very basic things, but always somehow become a challenge at times, especially around this time of year. So I've been behaving myself quite well. How have you been behaving yourself?
I have been behaving myself. I tend to have weeks where some weeks I am out with clients at schools and out of the house almost kind of 12 hours a day. And then some weeks I work from home and do a lot of Zoom sessions and I'm at home all week. And this week I've been home all week. And it's those weeks that I tend to go a little bit more off track with things. But every day I've written myself a to-do list with tick lists and made them pretty colours with pretty pens. But it's really kept me a lot more on track. So yeah, I've been very well behaved this week.
Good. I think that really plays because making it enjoyable is kind of one of those things that we talk about. And also James Clear always talks about is making it enjoyable. And sometimes pretty colors are just all you need to make you want to do it. So
I definitely gave myself some easy wins as well. Like a few of the items on my to-do list were have a shower. I was definitely going to get a free tick for that, but also the harder stuff as well, because I think sometimes I'll try and write myself a to-do list and I'll make it very aspirational. But by the end of the day, I've only ticked off like 20 or 30% of the ticks. And that's just a bit sad.
Yeah. So, I think we could do a whole episode on writing a to-do list in a way that's going to set you up for success.
I thought you were going to say stationery recommendations. I was like, I'm in.
I mean, I'm in for that too. I don't need another notebook or pen or planner. But I did get a notebook for my birthday, but it's a very lovely notebook and I will report back on that. So
nice. I have a rule in place for myself where I'm not allowed to buy a new notebook until I have completed the last page of the last one, because I probably have about 10 blank notebooks around the house somewhere. So the addiction is real.
It is. It's very real. Talking about gifts and buying things, we are talking about how to stay sane around the holidays on this episode.
Yeah, super. We figured it's kind of start of December and lots of holidays are coming up. We've just had Thanksgiving, or you guys have just had Thanksgiving, and Hannukah, Eid, Christmas, they're all coming up. For me, of course, the only experience I have of these is Christmas. So if I just refer to Christmas, just know I'm referring to all the holidays, but I also don't have any experience of what other holiday days might be like.
They're fun.
They can be fun, but they can also be problematic. So are they ever problematic for you? What's some of the problems that you've come up against?
I have definitely come up against, and we've talked about this definitely in the How to Be Awesome in Autumn episode, and it's around the appetizer portion of any holiday or really any party get-together is the cheese and crackers and all of those chips and dip and anything that you can just eat and mindlessly eat without even paying attention. You don't
normally get them at any other time of year. So it feels like, got to have them now because it's a holiday day.
Right. And when I eat them in my own house, they're portioned out and I have them on a plate versus at a party. It's just grab, which probably isn't totally happening right now with quarantine and COVID, but it's still definitely a challenge.
And maybe especially after having a drink or two, and the self-control around those treat foods is maybe slightly dimmed.
Yes, for sure. What do you typically struggle with around holidays and get-togethers?
They're people. And I know my parents listening to this podcast. I know that some of my other family members do. We are a really close family. We love each other dearly. We talk on an almost daily basis. But when you put us all in a house for more than a few hours at a time, there are explosions. And I think we're all relatively spicy personalities and have quite different ideas of what is right and wrong. And we're very honest with each other. So that can sometimes be problematic.
Be a challenge for sure. And I think a lot of people can identify with that.
Yeah. I guess there tends to be a complete lack of routine. Or it's just a different routine. Maybe it is the same routine for every Christmas day, but it's just very different to the routine that you would normally have in day to day. And that can throw people off sometimes, particularly for the children in the house. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old nephew, and it's confusing for them, I think. And it's confusing for the adults sometimes. Like, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? Is it lunchtime? I don't know. We're having a glass of champagne at 9 a.m. Who knows?
Right. Who knows? It is. And it can be okay to realize that one day is one day, but for some people, realizing that one day is only one day and not the entire week in between Christmas and New Year's or whatever holiday you have. Hanukkah's 8 days long. That's a challenge if you're eating all of that delicious food for 8 days.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
No. To confirm, it's the adults having the glass of champagne, not the nephews.
Yeah.
In case anyone's concerned. Yeah. What else? Why else might Christmas or holidays be a problem?
I think there's a lot of, and we kind of talked about this, but a lot of food that is not usually around, and they may become triggers to binge or to drink if they're salty foods, drinking more. And you may also be using that as a coping mechanism. Oh my goodness, a coping mechanism for what's going on around in terms of people's comments, statements, conversations, trying to get out of and escape a situation. If we looked at this behaviorally, it's a lot of escape behavior, drinking to cope with somebody's comment about your body type, or maybe that look like you've lost weight, but you didn't want to have that comment made, or that you've gained weight and you didn't want to have that comment made, and using that as an escape and a comfort.
Okay. So I think it's fair to conclude that high days and holidays, and Christmas Day in particular, can come with a few problems sometimes. It's a wonderful day, but there are things to think about going into it.
For sure.
Okay. So for me, first of all, get the basics sorted. So some of the basic things that I think about before kind of going into Christmas Day is just the real body basics of, I know that if I don't drink enough water, I will get a headache, I will feel tired, and I'll be a real crabby, you know what. Mm-hmm. And so I have this with me. I'm holding up a 2-liter water bottle, carry a bottle of water around me with me at all times. And to the point where now Jim will even say before we leave the house, like, have you got the water bottles for us? Because at least if it's hanging around somewhere, and often like if it's a Christmas party, I won't carry it into the party with me, but I'll have it in the bedroom of the house that we're staying in. And so when I go up to change or go up to check my makeup, I'll have a few gulps on in there. So getting the basics like water sorted.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not to say that you can't have your water bottle with you at all times either. I actually brought it with me to Thanksgiving, meant to bring it in. I made sure to have water, but I probably would have drank a lot more had I had my big water bottle. I think movement is a big thing too. Getting in movement prior to going into those situations, working it out. I can say for certain, I did not prep and do any of the basics before this year's Thanksgiving at all, like I normally would. But movement is typically a really good strategy to do before you go into those situations. It just gets all the good endorphins going and gets kind of your body just in that state of healthiness that we talked about on all of those fall episodes.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess both with those things, then just thinking about all the things that make you feel good in general. So whether that's drinking enough water, getting movement, wearing comfortable clothes. I am past the age of wearing sparkly little tight numbers because yes, I want to look nice, but going in, making sure that I'm going to be warm enough, I'm going to be comfortable, my pants are stretchy enough to take that extra piece of cake or whatever it might be. But making sure that all the things that normally make you feel good, you don't just throw out the window just because it's Christmas Day.
Right. And being really mindful both before and during and after that get together, and mindful even before getting your head in a space of, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the episode, but what your goals and intentions are going into that get together. And we haven't done it as often as we used to, and we should get back to it. But Tom and I used to say, okay, what's our intention going into this, dinner with friends? Okay, my intention is to make good connections, have great conversation, learn about XYZ, and really making that your focus versus just on the alcohol, or being concerned about the statements that may get made to you or about somebody else. So really kind of going in with that intention of, you've got your goals, you know what your plan is, you know what you're going to do.
I love that. And yeah, all the antecedent strategies. So I agree with you. You might talk to Tom. For me, it's either Jim, or in previous years when I hadn't met Jim, it was my sister-in-law, and we are tight. And she is a good person to get on side. So often pre-Christmas, we will have almost like a military planning session of, okay, this is what's happening. How are we going to deal with X and Y and Z? And she might say, oh, I'm really worried about this. And I'll say, okay, well, let's pre-plan for that and do this. And so some of the things we've done, for example, is now her and I will not have an alcoholic drink before about 4:00 in the afternoon, because if we say no, thank you to the wine, it will more encourage other members of the family to also say no, thank you to wine, because they model a lot from me and my sister-in-law. Maybe it could be the way that we're speaking to each other, and we'll have an agreement on that. So yeah, definitely getting someone who you trust on side and having those conversations beforehand.
For sure. And being very much in alignment with, if you're going somewhere with either your significant other or a sibling, someone that you trust, knowing what their concerns are is so important. Knowing what, my husband's concerns are, where he is worried about, certain variables in the situation, and knowing what your kind of cues and signals are of, hey, I need a break, or I need you to kind of help me with this conversation, whatever it may be. Having that ready beforehand versus trying to navigate it in the moment or afterwards is a really, really helpful tool to have in your pocket.
Yeah, Jim definitely knows my face of, I'm smiling, but I'm about to lose it. You need to come now. So like, we need to go to the shops and buy more coriander. And he used to say, like, it's Christmas Day, the shops aren't open. I was like, we need to go to the shops and buy coriander. He's like, okay, we're going for a walk.
Okay, we're going. Let's go now.
Who eats coriander on Christmas Day? But I then guess like timeout isn't just for kids. It's okay to grab your trusted person, or even go by yourself and take a fun podcast with you or some music and go for a timeout, go for a walk, lock yourself in the bathroom for 5 minutes just to take a breather and play Candy Crush if that's what's going to help you. It's okay to have a timeout for yourself as well.
Yeah. And it goes for kids too. Kids go wild and crazy and bananas at holidays, but there's so much stimuli and sounds and people that they're not used to being around that it's hard to navigate that. And sometimes they need like a quiet break. Like, we're going to go up into one of the bedrooms and just take a minute. Like, you can do the same thing. You are entirely capable of doing that same thing. And it's, I think, one of those lesser used strategies.
For sure. I guess another antecedent that we use a lot of is making sure that before we go to any party, or if we're staying for Christmas, make sure the breakfast is full of protein and veggies. So either before we go to a party, having something like, I don't know, eggs on toast or a chicken salad sandwich, or for breakfast, we'll have piles of broccoli and eggs, or salmon and eggs, whatever is your kind of delicious breakfast, but also protein packed and veggie packed, so that at least before you've gone and started drinking booze or started being around lots of sugary, fatty treats, you've lined your stomach with something decent at least. So you're less likely to go in hard on all the other things.
Right. And it will kind of start to decrease that likelihood that you're going to eat all of the appetizers because you've already filled on that meal before. And it's okay to not eat a ton of appetizers. And even if somebody's got it all out there, your stomach is feeling full, and it's not this both a social situation and you are hungry. So you're going to be more likely to eat. You're filling your body with those good nutrients and less likely to eat the cheese and crackers. Not to say that you can't. It's just you may be less likely to overeat on things that you didn't
Manipulated your own MOs for these things.
You might be hearing that.
Yeah, but also particularly for me, our family we like a glass of wine, and I know if I have any alcohol on an empty stomach, it goes straight to my head. So yeah, eating something beforehand is always good.
Oh yeah, highly recommended. And then we kind of touched on this a little bit too, but rehearsing what you're going to say in certain situations. And you talked about this a little bit with your sister. I do it with Tom. But if those kind of repeated situations are coming up with your family or any of your loved ones or friend groups too, obviously like this year is very different, but Friendsgivings, if you have that one friend that you know you're always kind of at each other's necks about something, or they just trigger something for you, verbally rehearsing what you're going to say and practicing it so that you know, okay, if they say this to me, this is how I can respond, and you have that in your arsenal versus trying to just pull reactively from that situation.
Yeah,
and
we can all think of the most sassy and wonderful answers in hindsight, but in the moment, you're just left goldfishing of like, did you really just say that to me?
Goldfishing. I like that term.
But you're kind of like, what? Why did you say that? This is something that I have spent years practicing, and I would like to think I'm relatively good at now. And I was thinking about it in preparation for this podcast. I think I actually go through a fairly set prompt hierarchy of the behaviors I want to see in other people. So I will start off with very kind and gentle of like, I really appreciate that you love me. I appreciate that you care about me. I appreciate that this is coming from a place of love, but I'm actually good with where I am right now, or I'm happy with what I have on my plate, or like what you think of my body is what you think of my body. I don't need to hear it. And if they keep doing it, I will get progressively sassier, progressively more standoffish, until eventually it will be you don't need to say that to me. I don't care what you think about it. And trying to remember through all of it, I never want to get to that stage. And ideally, what you would do is take that person to one side before the big day and have a sit down with them and say, look, I've gone through a lot of processing of feelings about this situation that you keep trying to comment on. I don't appreciate the backhanded or snide or slightly veiled comments in the moment. So can we just have an honest conversation about it now? And they might come to you and say, I'm really worried about you because X, Y, or Z. And then have that honest, loving conversation. But it doesn't need to be had on Christmas Day with little comments here or there. And then maybe you can help them understand where you're coming from. So it could be, actually, I'm working with a nutritionist and I feel really good. And this is what I'm doing and this is how it's working. So even though you see this on my plate, actually where I've come from planning this is somewhere really sensible and balanced. And maybe it's just an understanding thing, but it's also okay to have those firm yet spicy comments up your sleeve to just shut it down very quickly. Or my absolute favorite is full extinction and redirection. So somebody, maybe one of the older males in the family, might make a comment on body shape or body size, and I will put it on full extinction and then say, did you see the Queen's speech this year? And honestly, half the time they don't even notice you've done it, and they just go straight into a conversation about the Queen's speech. Or did you see that amazing rocket that the nephew got and is playing with? And they don't even notice that you haven't responded to their very rude comments, because some family members like those ones. They don't want to engage in a conversation about body shape and size and being more woke. They don't.
Yeah. It's a very, I like that way of putting it, because a lot of our behavior analyst listeners or our BT listeners will understand that, but extinction is where you're not giving that comment any attention at all. You're just ignoring it, redirecting the conversation to something completely different, which I am the queen of doing in certain things with certain people. And I did it a lot during the election situation of, great, so you need to fix your lunch pattern because that's what we're working on right now. And we're not going to make any comments about X, Y, or Z. And it goes hand in hand of just completely redirecting it and not giving it that attention that it requires or deserves. And honestly isn't going to change the behavior if you engage back and forth. And it's not to say that it's not going to bother you, but it's not going to continue that conversation.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think we could have a whole other podcast about having these awkward conversations with family members. And it's something that I've done extensively. And I've been very grateful that my family have been up for having those conversations, but then also reinforcing them and praising them for it afterwards. So after Christmas, going to those people and saying, I really appreciate that we had such a loving Christmas together. I didn't feel attacked at any point. And I love that you were mindful of not making those comments. So making sure that you praise them for that as well.
For sure. Reinforce that good behavior. All right.
Okay. What else?
So looking at I touched upon this in the beginning when we were talking about antecedent strategies. Oh my goodness, Emily, find your words. Antecedent strategies.
Words are hard.
I know. It's like it's part of the requirements of this.
Are you still in Thanksgiving drinking? Is this the problem?
I am not. But looking at your values and your goals for the day and we talked about in mindfulness, but a little bit more on how you can look at your values and then set goals based on those values.
Good. This is a huge topic. So just quickly then, what might be some of your goals and values around holidays?
So one of my biggest goals is making sure that I'm eating enough, which is a funny kind of interesting thing for many people because most people are overeating. I've noticed on certain holidays I eat plenty and I'm totally fine, but other holidays, Christmas Eve in particular, I don't end up eating enough of the meal itself. So I have kind of these lighter foods that are not filled with protein and vegetables. And I've had a holiday where that really played a role in how I did later on after alcohol. And my in-laws can attest to all of this because we still joke about it, but I didn't have enough really good food in my system that day. And this was before I really kind of focused on antecedent strategies and eating enough good proteins, carbs, veggies, fats beforehand and drinking enough water. But eating those more filling foods, I typically tend to eat the appetizers, but not the full meal. I'm just not a big meal person. And so that's where I tend to struggle is eating at like the mealtime and getting that protein in then. So making sure to eat it beforehand is a really big strategy that I use now.
I'm sorry to ask.
Yes.
An appetizer is what we would call in the UK a starter. It's like the small dish before the main dish.
Yes.
Got you. Fine. Okay. We call that a starter. Starter in a main course. Yeah, that makes sense.
Starter makes more sense than
appetizer. Sounds fancy.
Oh yeah, we're so fancy over here. We call them apps. They're just apps. What app are you bringing?
Fair.
Yeah.
Nice. Anything else?
That's what I had. I think, it goes a lot into just planning and prepping and being prepared for what situations, you've been through all of these situations in the past for however many holidays you've been through and
what went well and what didn't go well and try and plan for it next time.
Mm-hmm. And just remember, it's one day and it does not define how the rest of your week or month or year needs to go. It's one day. That is like the biggest thing is it's just one day.
This is a rant that I had on my social media this week, but waking up the day after Christmas Day, remember, you cannot have put on a huge amount of body fat in one day. 1 pound of body fat is 3,500 calories that you would have to eat above your normal daily intake. And so you haven't woken up on Boxing Day. Do you call the day after Christmas Day Boxing Day?
We know that other people call it Boxing Day. We don't, but like it's on our calendar.
Okay,
But
fine.
we don't refer to it as that.
Fine. But you don't wake up on the day after Christmas Day,
Right.
2 or 3 pounds heavier. No, 2 or 3 pounds heavier with fat. It's just water weight, food weight. So drink water, eat veggies, and go to the toilet and carry on with your day.
Yep,
Don't beat yourself up about it.
for sure.
Okay. I think that's all we
Lovely.
have time for.
Yes. Wonderful.
Super. Where can people find us?
So if you want to learn more or find more about Jo, you can go to her Instagram. She is at the Behavior Lady. She's in the UK. So behavior is spelled with a U. Maybe one day we'll not have to include that. And if you want to connect more with me, my Instagram is